Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Electricity went just as I was about to start and has flickered on and off. Inshallah, we're using a hotspot, my wife's phone, hotspot on her phone. So we'll just go ahead. Let me continue to recognize people calling in. Tango Alpha, Assalamu alaikum. Somebody else, Linda Hussein, wa alaikum salam. Mahdi from Afghanistan, mashallah, welcome. May Allah bring peace to your land and make your Ramadan acceptable. Inshallah, I don't think you'll be having too much problems with COVID-19 there. That's quite a struggle. Dawood Duni, wa alaikum salam. Muhammad Mujib from Sri Lanka, welcome. South Africa, India, Barakallahu fikum. Nice to see you all here. Adamawa in Nigeria, from Bangladesh. MashaAllah. Barakallahu fikum. All right. We'll begin. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن استنى بسنته إلى يوم الدين. In this session which is our 9th session, we'll be looking at the 10th name, which is Al-Muhaymin. Al-Muhaymin, the Guardian. This name of Allah can be found in one location in the Qur'an. In Surah Al-Hashr, verse 23. Allah says there, Al-Malikul Quddus Salamul Mu'minul Muhaymin. The sovereign, the holy, the bestower of peace, the grantor of security, the guardian. That's the loose translation, the guardian. Grammarians differed regarding the root from which this divine name was derived. Some held that it was from amana, to make someone feel safe. Thus it meant the same as amin, trustworthy. Others held that it was from mu'tamanun, trusted, and yet others suggested it meant watchman, guardian, or witness. Relative to Allah, the name means the witness of everything. It's one of the meanings. Everything which takes place in Allah's creation, as in verse 61 of Surah Yunus, whatever deed you may be doing, I am a witness of it, while you are deeply engrossed in it. Allah describes himself as the witness. Kunna alaykum shuhuda. It also means the watcher and guardian over all the affairs of his creatures. So the name Muhaymin has with it a number of different nuances which we need to be aware of as we worship Allah utilizing this name. We mentioned the different nuances, the different shades of meaning, and it would give our worship of Allah through this name greater depth and more involvement when we utilize the name in its fullness. Now, if we go back to our normal pattern, that after understanding the name, because without understanding the name we can't do anything. If it's just a name said, then it's just like a sound, which other religions have sounds like the Hindu Om, which is repeated, and belief that this sound repeated by many people continually, will bring about what people are praying for, striving to do, etc., etc. But our worship is based on what is clear and understandable. As the Prophet ﷺ said, "Taraktukum ala mahajjatin bayda." I've left you on a clear white plain. Layluha kanahariha, whose night is like its day. La yazighu anha illa halik. And anyone who deviates from it is destroyed. So the religion is very straightforward and clear. Of course, there are people who will try to complicate it and bring all other kinds of practices into the religion for all kinds of reasons. Some of them satanic, to misguide people, to draw them into shirk. Other times it's just greed, financial. So people will be told that if you do this or do that, you take this portion of mine or this ta'weez, this amulet, etc., pay the money for it, of course, and it's going to do wonders for you. So we have all kinds of factors out there. Anyway, our worshipping Allah through the name Al-Muhaymin. First and foremost, after understanding the meaning of Al-Muhaymin, because we'll be using that in our worship, or its meaning, we apply it according to our 4 principles of Ibn al-Battal. The first of which is to adopt what aspects of it are applicable, to confirm what aspects are unique and inapplicable, to find hope where there's a promise, and to feel fear where there's a warning. So, in terms of this attribute, name, which contains the attribute of guardianship, we can apply it in our lives by being guardians to those around us who are under our care. As Allah is the guardian to his creatures. We, among the creatures, should be guardians to those who are who have been put under our care. We should be conscious of what they're doing, witness what they're doing, do not just leave them on their own to do whatever they feel like and then only respond when issues arise. But we should be focused on what they're involved in, what they're doing. We should be aware. For example, like parents who allow their children to watch anything on television and then find their children doing all kinds of crazy things. I wonder, where did this come from? We don't do this in our family. This is not our tradition, our culture. We don't do this, but there weren't witnesses for them. There weren't watchmen overlooking everything that they were doing, or as much as is humanly possible. So, very important to be an effective guardian. One has to be conscious, aware, and actively engaged in overseeing what is under our care and responsibility. This is not COVID-19, inshallah. The second principle, to confirm where it is unique and inapplicable. So in this case, ultimate guardianship is only with Allah. We should know our limits. And, some people, if something happens, even though they were careful, they were watching out, trying to take care of what should be taken care of, yet, in spite of all of that, something happens. Something evil, something terrible happens, and they are devastated. They are devastated, blaming themselves. Oh, I should have. Oh, I could have. Oh, I'm responsible. When in fact they weren't. This was beyond their ability to prevent. Our guardianship has its limits. Allah's guardianship has no limits. So, it's not to say one shouldn't feel sad if something bad happens. No, of course you're going to feel bad about it. Regardless of whether only Allah could have prevented it or you could have prevented it. Regardless, you're going to feel bad. And that's understanding. That's understandable. That's human. That's normal. But we shouldn't become so engrossed in blaming ourselves. Some people beat themselves down until they become nothing. Their lives become wasted after that. So many cases. This is people. These are times when people need to see psychologists, or psychiatrists, whatever, to help them, counselors to help them deal with the problem. So our belief in Allah's attribute of guardianship, ultimate guardianship, should help us, if the belief is real and solid, firm, it should help us to be patient when it is needed to deal with those times where things happen by Allah's will, which we could not have prevented. So many people's lives are ruined because of their inability to grasp this fine point, that Allah is the ultimate guardian. We can do what we can, what we should, what we're able to do, but we can't cover and do everything as human beings. Things will happen. Things happen. And we need to have the strength to be able to ride that wave, that trial that has rolled over us. Otherwise, we just end up wallowing in our sadness and self-blame and all this. And some people just go and commit suicide. You know, we have that happening all around the world. Farmers, drought comes, and it's so devastating, so tough to handle. They realize they can't feed their families because of it. And they commit suicide. Every year in countries where they have famines and low rain, crop yields very low, you find people committing suicide because they don't have that sense of Allah being there in charge and in control of everything, ultimately. The third principle, we said, where there is hope, or there should be hope, where there is a promise. Is there a promise in this name? Yes. There is a divine promise of guardianship in this life, and it should promote hope in the hearts of the believers, regardless of the trials faced in this life. That's Allah's promise. So from this name, our sense of hope should be strengthened, because calamities is where our sense of hope is tried. When that calamity strikes, if your hope is weak, you're finished. If your hope is strong, if you're aware, you're conscious that Allah is in control of everything, He is the guardian, then you'll be able to ride it. Sad, tears, but still you'll be able to overcome it. And the fourth point of Ibn al-Battal, he mentioned that we should have fear where the name contains a warning. Now this name of guardianship, the guardian, Al-Muhaymin, does it contain a warning? Well, yes, indirectly, because guardianship can only be deserved or expected if we are obedient to Allah's command, to the Sharia. If we're following the Sharia, then we can expect guardianship. We can genuinely call on Allah for His guardianship. But all of this is if we are obedient to Allah's commands. And of course, Allah is the witness of all that we do. So the warning is in that witness point. Guardianship, yeah. That's who He is. He is the ultimate guardian. But the warning comes in the aspect of the meaning of Al-Muhaymin, which focuses on Allah witnessing everything. Because that's what the guard does, isn't it? The guard, of an establishment, he is supposed to be witnessing, looking around, being aware of what is taking place in the establishment that he is a guard of. On the greater scale, Allah witnesses. His guardianship is connected with his witnessing of what is taking place. Now, the effects of belief in this divine name. Belief that Allah is the supreme witness who watches over all that takes place in the universe should lead the believer to reflect on his or her thoughts, words, and deeds. وَمَا اللَّهُ بِغَافِلٍ عَمَّا تَعْمَلُونَ. And Allah is not inattentive of whatever you do. He's not ghafil, inattentive, negligent, unaware. No. As the witness, he's fully aware of everything that we do. And this encourages the believers to take stock of themselves and to check their lifestyles. People easily get caught up in corruption when in corrupt environments. You know, we blame it on the environment. Everybody else around us in the office is corrupt. They're cheating the establishment, cheating the owners, etc. So, you know, peer pressure. If we don't join in, they will look at us as suspect, spies for the administration. They will talk about us behind their backs, behind our backs. And we may find that it is a convenient excuse to join in with them. But that's no excuse. It's commonly said, I had no choice. Everybody was doing it. But we always have a choice. Guarding the implication of this name should help keep the believer on track. The implication of this name should help the believers be more conscious of what they're doing. Secondly, this divine name, Al-Muhaymin, invites the true believers to the halls of ihsan. We all know ihsan. After iman, there's Islam, iman, and the third level, ihsan. Ihsan, where we worship Allah with such a consciousness that it is as if we see Him. And even when that weakens, or it's less, we can't achieve that, we can't maintain it. We do it, we worship Him, knowing that He sees us. So, whenever the drive of the believer weakens, and of course this is the nature, we have ups and we have downs, ups and downs, this is life. Times when iman is strong and we try to do a lot, and times when iman is low, we end up doing only little. What keeps us from falling apart altogether? It is knowing that Allah sees us. So we try to sincerely worship Him with the certain knowledge that He sees whatever we do. So this quality of the name Muhaymin should bring about or help to bring about some of that ihsan-based worship and approach to the deen, where Muslims, based on knowing that Allah sees us, and if Allah blesses us with higher levels of understanding, we worship Him, seeing Him in everything. Seeing Him in everything, as if He is looking directly at us. Each and every one of us, in spite of the numbers of creation, etc., He sees and He watches all. He oversees His creation down to the ant, to the microbe, all the way down to COVID-19. He sees and He knows. The third principle of how this name should affect us is that reflection on this name as a means of remembrance of Allah encourages the believers to stop or at least reduce their evil deeds by blocking them while they are still in the realm of thought. This is the struggle. People commonly complain, I can't stop doing these things or whatever, because we're caught up in the doing, and it seems so rooted and established we can't change the situation. But reflection on this divine name should help us to reduce our evil deeds by blocking them while they're still in the realm of thought, while we're still thinking about them. Before they take root in our minds and our hearts and evolve into evil words where we start speaking about this, making it seem, alluring and beautiful to others. You start to draw others around us, sharing in this evil. And eventually, this talk, which we are speaking now evil, will turn into and evolve into evil actions. And this is the reason why the Prophet ﷺ had said, Allah overlooks the bad thoughts of the Muslim nation as long as they do not speak about it or act on it. Catch it before it becomes words. It's a thought in your head. Where did it come from? Allah knows best. Could have been something you saw on TV, something you saw on an advertisement in the streets, something you heard as a word somebody said. You got to engage in some conversations and the idea pops into your head. A book you found, a magazine you glanced at, whatever, it has popped into your head, that evil thought. So what do? You tackle it there and then. Catch that thought. If we're able to do that, then through reflecting on the name Al-Muhaymin, we'll be able to banish evil thoughts before they take root as evil intentions or actual mental decisions resolve. So because the evil deed evolves from, I'm not saying in all times, sometimes it can just come out in a circumstances, can catch people unawares and they may end up in evil. But in general, evil deeds, deliberate evil deeds, begin as fleeting thoughts which pass through our minds. And that thought, when dwelt upon, you can either pass it aside, knock it aside and carry on. Just it came in your head, oh, where did that come from? A'udhu billah. And let it go. Other times, it comes in your head, maybe because of what your situation you were in was, you were feeling bad anyway, and this makes you feel better, and so you start to dwell on it. And the more you dwell on it, the more it becomes rooted in our minds and in our hearts. And until it becomes now a resolve, we decide, I'm gonna do this mentally. Then you start speaking about it to others, and then you act on it. You speak about it to others oftentimes because you want others to join you. You try to bring them in, pull them in. You feel better in numbers. A lot of us, most of us. This is that herd mentality. Safety in the herd when everybody else is doing it. So, we should not consider from this name, we should not consider any good deed too insignificant to do, nor any evil act too insignificant to avoid. Because though we are not held accountable, we said, Allah overlooks the bad thoughts of the Muslim nation as long as they do not speak about it or act on it. On the other side, He rewards the good thoughts if they commit to it, speak about it, and act on it. Because this is the balance, the good and the evil. So we shouldn't, because everything, whether it's good or it's evil, it begins, oftentimes, it begins as only a thought, a fleeting thought. Thought of good or thought of evil. The Prophet ﷺ spoke about this, Hadith Qudsi from Allah, in which he related to us, Prophet ﷺ, from Allah, whoever thinks of doing a good deed, then does not do it, Allah will write it down as one complete good deed. That fleeting thought came and you reflected on it. That would be a good thing to do. But for whatever reason, and we can look at those reasons after, but for whatever reason, you didn't do it. You went on, did something else, etc. Because you did recognize its goodness and you thought about it for a minute, it's written down for you as a good deed, as a complete good deed. Allah went on to say, if he thinks of doing a good deed and then does it, Allah will write it down as between 10 and 700-fold or many more. Instead of recording it just as a single good deed, it will now be recorded as 10 good deeds up to 700 multiplied up to 700 times and more, as Allah wishes, once we do it. And on the other side, Allah went on to say, if he thinks of doing a bad deed and then he does not do it, Allah will write it down as one complete good deed. If he thinks to do a bad deed, the thought came in his head, etc., and then he doesn't do it, he still gets the reward of that as a good deed. It's not written as a bad deed against him. And if he thinks about it and does it, Allah goes on to say, Allah will write it down as one bad deed. This is the mercy of Allah. Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim. This is His mercy, His grace, that our bad deeds are written down only as one, and our good deeds are written as 10, at least. Good deed done, 10. Good thought, 1. But good deed, 10. So what happens with good deeds and bad deeds? Good deeds erase bad deeds. That's why the Prophet ﷺ said, follow up your bad deeds with good deeds. It will wipe it out. Meaning you've done something bad, then do something good. That good deed can wipe it out. But of course it means a sincere good deed. It doesn't just mean a good deed done anyhow. Like some people who will tell you they're involved in bad things, etc., etc., and you tell them, hey brother, or sister, this is not good. Give it up. Don't do this anymore. They tell you, well, listen, I do Umrah every year. And the Umrah wipes out those bad deeds. So this is planned. This is a planned life cycle. You do evil, you do your bad things, but you go and do Umrah, or you make a Hajj, or a couple of Umrahs, depending how bad it is. Maybe you need to do 2 or 3. It's all gone. This is not what we're talking about. We're talking about a sincere good deed. Because what kind of Umrah can you make? When you know you're doing it just ritualistically, you're doing it as a ritual. Because Allah tells you, Innal hasanat yudhibna sayyi'at. Good deeds erase evil deeds. That's fact. But it's sincere good deeds, not any good deed. If there's no sincerity behind that deed, it's just a ritual, then it's not going to wipe out anything. It will increase your evil. Now, in terms of this general system that Allah has identified in terms of when deeds are counted, etc., we just need to keep in mind that if a person has a intention to do evil, but they didn't do it because they couldn't do it. They didn't do it because they couldn't do it. The qadr of Allah didn't allow them to do it. Then no. They get an evil deed against themselves. they get an evil deed against themselves. It doesn't mean that Allah's qadr stops you from doing evil and you're going to get a reward. No, it doesn't work like that. Just a clarifying point so as not to fool ourselves. Now, the other aspect that is worth reflecting is that when the believer strives to do whatever is obligatory and recommended in all spheres of his or her life, while believing that Allah is Al-Muhaymin, the Guardian, this will in turn protect and safeguard the affairs of his worldly life and his or her religion. That due to one's righteousness, one's goodness, Allah can also protect and guard not only that person, yourself, but even your family, your children, your wives, your relatives, etc. Because of your observing what Allah has commanded, and Allah being the guardian of your affairs, He doesn't leave that guardianship only to be a benefit to you personally, but it can benefit the family also. And we know that from the story in the Qur'an, in Surah Al-Kahf, where Al-Khidr, or Khadir, that's the proper name, proper pronunciation. Khidr is slang pronunciation, but everybody knows Khidr. Anyway, after Al-Khidr and Prophet Musa had entered a town, a very inhospitable town, very unfriendly people, when they asked for some food, drink, place to rest, the people rejected them. And then on their way out of the town, because there was nothing for them there, on their way out, Al-Khidr saw a wall about to fall. It was going to fall down soon. And he went, got stones, mortar, whatever, and propped it up, stopped it from falling. And Musa questioned, why did you do that? This was the last question. He shouldn't have asked it. After that, Al-Khidr left him. Told him, you really can't handle this. You can't handle being my companion. When Khidr asked him, why did you do this? Because, these people were so inhospitable. You should have asked for some payment. Take something for this. I'll do it if you pay me. Fix it up. Anyway, the Khidr explained to him after their journey together had reached its ending point. He explained to him that this wall belonged to 2 orphans. These are innocents in the town. This was their wall. And underneath the wall there was treasure. If the wall had fallen down, there was wealth that had been buried there by their family, which they weren't aware of. Had the wall fallen down, the wealth or treasure would have been exposed, and the people of the town would have stolen it, and they would have gotten nothing. And when Allah informed Khidr, and Khidr conveyed it to Musa, he said, وَكَانَ أَبُوهُمَا صَالِحًا. Their father was righteous. Allah looked out for these orphans whose father had died. Because the father was a righteous man, Allah intervened and protected those orphans from harm which would have come from the people of the town. I mean, so this is telling us that a believer's good deeds, etc., can benefit not only himself, but benefit generations to come. So Allah as Al-Muhaymin, He is the one who will look after the family of those who live righteously, conscious of Allah's guardianship. So, good can come from previous good deeds. Allah will look after the believers based on what they have done even in the past, good things of the past. And we pray that Allah gives us good in this life or in situations that we're in, based on the good that we have done in our previous days, previous life in this world. We also see in the example of Prophet Yusuf, when the wife of the ruler tried to seduce him, that Allah protected him because of his good, the sincere good that he had done. Allah protected him at his weakest moment. He's a young man, poor, who is being seduced by the ruler's wife. Like a gardener or driver for the president, and the president's wife tries to seduce him. What is he going to do? And not only that, she's beautiful. She's beautiful. So Allah protected him, as he said, that with imprisonment, he ended up going to jail, was to remove from him sin and corruption, because he was among my sincere worshippers. إِنَّهُ كَانَ مِنْ عِبَادِنَا الْمُخْلَصِينَ, or إِنَّهُ مِنْ عِبَادِنَا الْمُخْلَصِينَ. Indeed, he was among my sincere worshippers. So we can see that this name Al-Muhaymin has so many nuances, so many facets to it. And we should use it as a part of our dua. Call on Allah using this name, reflecting on all that we have looked at today. And people ask, well, how do we do that? You can just say, for example, Ya Muhaymin, bihaqqin, O true guardian, you are the true ultimate guardian. Help me control my evil thoughts, my evil words, and my evil deeds. That's a simple dua. And I'm not saying this is not narrated from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so I'm going to say, you say this after every prayer, and you do it so many times, and you do this, you do that, and this is going to come in your life, and that. No. Just a simple dua. Just that you can use with any of Allah's names. But when you use it, you use Allah's names in a context. It's related to what you are seeking Allah's help for. Then it becomes more real. So, this is just an example, and many more eloquent examples could be given. And inshallah, I hope that the name Al-Muhaymin has taken on a new meaning. Not too many people focus on this name. I don't think I've ever met anybody by the name of Abdul Muhaymin. You can't take the name Muhaymin, Al-Muhaymin. Muhaymin, yes. I had a good friend from the US, from Philadelphia. When I first went to study in Medina, he was there studying along with me by the name of Muhaymin. Nafi' Muhaymin. May Allah bless his soul. So, inshallah, we can look at a few questions if you have any. And inshallah, we'll see you. Otherwise, we'll see you tomorrow with name number 11, Al-Aziz, inshallah. So, any questions? There are a lot of du'as. Ameen to all. Saida Chowdhury is asking a sort of unrelated question. Did the Prophet ﷺ and his family use utensils made out of pig bones? Well, whoever told you that, lied. We have no evidence of that. And it's not the practice amongst the Arabs to make utensils from pig bones anyway. Trying to stay on the topic. Sir, is there any recommendation in beard length? Oh, brother, please, we're still on the beard length. Muhammad Tawheed Hussein. The principle, some scholars say that as long as what's on your face is recognizable as a beard, that's your beard. Yes, the Sahaba used to trim after a fist, but this was not specifically instructed, etc., meaning that if they want to trim their beard, they would take a hold of their beard and trim. But that's if your beard grew more than a fist. What about all the people whose beards don't hardly grow? So the principle of trimming, basically trimming is grooming. So grooming is not something which is going to be restricted only to those people whose beards grow more than a fist. That's not logical, not reasonable. And the instruction from the Prophet ﷺ was to grow your beards. The Sahaba grew them and trimmed them. So it's understood that grow your beards didn't mean let it go down to your ankles. And we know that the Prophet ﷺ groomed himself. He didn't just let his hair grow anyway, anyhow. He trimmed hair and most likely beard also. Okay, I don't see too many questions on today's name, but inshallah, it's a name we should strive to remember and to utilize. We all need Allah's guardianship, His protection. We all should be aware that He is a witness. And based on His knowledge, He knows who is sincere among us and who is not. So may Allah make us among His sincere worshippers and bless us with His guardianship. Barakallahu fikum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.